A most basic expectation of just about any horror movie is that people are going to die, because that's usually the natural consequence of finding a serial killer or demonic spirit in your midst, right? But even horror films with their fair share of death might save the most memorably horrifying moment for a sequence that doesn't directly involve anyone dying, believe it or not. Rather, they might instead focus on a character being horribly brutalized and traumatized, which can ultimately be so much harder to watch. No matter how much death occurred in these movies otherwise, these non-deadly scenes are the moments that everyone will remember forever. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 of the most horrific movie scenes where nobody dies. Number 10. Paul gets hobbled, Misery. Without question, the most memorable scene from Misery is the infamous hobbling sequence, where deranged fan Annie Wilkes takes a sledgehammer and uses it to break the ankles of captive author Paul Sheldon. Nobody dies in the scene, and there's not even a single splash of blood, but director Rob Reiner does a fantastic job of milking the sequence for every nauseating drop of gut-wrenching tension. James Caan's brilliantly terrified performance as Paul, who is well aware of what is about to happen, is juxtaposed with the cool determination of Bates's Annie, who eschews the over-the-top camp you might expect in favour of eerie calm. And the act of the hobbling itself, as depicted in this scene, isn't cartoonishly violent in the slightest. Instead, the visuals and sound of Paul's ankles breaking are disgustingly realistic, truly making the audience feel like they're intruding upon something that is actually happening. No matter the film's cathartically violent climax, where Paul finally kills Annie, it's the hobbling scene that's taken root in the collective consciousness over the last 35 years. Number 9. The Needle Pit, Saw 2. It's undeniably ironic that the most wince-inducing scene in perhaps the entire Saw series involves a character who actually survives a trap. We're talking, of course, about the unforgettable needle pit trap in Saw 2. When one of the film's test subjects, Xavier, is tasked with sifting through a pit of needles to find a key, he refuses to participate, instead throwing Amanda into the pit to do the job. Cue a toe-curlingly discomforting sequence where Amanda searches for the key while getting stuck with needle after needle. It doesn't take much imagination to consider the visceral pain she must be feeling, a fact made all the worse given that the first Saw established her as a heroin addict. Though this is one of Saw's few trap scenes without a gory payoff, its relatively tactile nature makes it far tougher to watch than just about any other scene across all 10 movies. Number 8. Baby on the Beach, Under the Skin. You needn't be a parent to find the baby scene from Under the Skin absolutely skin-crawlingly horrifying. Early in the movie, a couple drowns at the beach, with our alien protagonist finishing off the male by bashing his head in with a rock. As she drags the man off, seemingly to feed on him, we can see a small baby in the corner of the frame screaming, presumably the couple's child, which the alien soundly ignores. While you might assume the baby would be found by another patron on the beach, we soon cut back to the beach in the middle of the night, and the baby is revealed to still be there, wailing its head off. Worse still, the motorcyclist alien arrives at the scene to retrieve the dead man's belongings while completely ignoring the baby's screams as the tide draws ever closer. We don't see the baby die on screen, but the implication couldn't be more clear, especially with a radio report the next day quietly mentioning that the family is missing. Number 7. Riley's Possession, Talk to Me. Talk to Me is an incredible directorial debut from Danny and Michael Filippo, and who among us will ever forget the all-timer scene where Jade's younger brother Riley gets possessed? Poor Riley's body is entirely taken over by spirits after spending too long holding the possessed hand, after which the spirit attempts to kill him by smashing his head repeatedly against the table and then forcing him to try and gouge out his own eyeball. Though protagonist Mia manages to stop that, the possession continues, with Riley being flung across the room before his head is continually slammed into a cabinet, until Jade intervenes and saves him just before the spirit can administer a killing blow. Possession scenes are almost never this visceral, especially without the victim dying, but the sound effects, blood and makeup, and Joe Bird's phenomenal performance in the scene make it incredibly tough to sit through. Against the odds though, Riley actually survives to the end of the movie, so that's something. Number 6. The realistic cerebral angiography, The Exorcist. The Exorcist is rightly often held up as one of the most terrifying movies ever made, and at the time of its release in 1973, it was famous for causing audience members to faint and vomit. Yet this mostly wasn't in response to the demonic shenanigans occurring throughout the film, but its extremely realistic and clinical depiction of a cerebral angiography. After young Reagan's behaviour becomes concerningly violent, her mother Chris takes her to the hospital for a battery of invasive medical tests. Despite featuring no supernatural hooey whatsoever, the sequence has garnered strong reactions from audiences ever since the film's release, largely due to the detached, matter-of-fact way in which director William Friedkin shoots it. Seeing a young girl stuck with needles, blood realistically spurting out, and the discomforting sound of the angiography machine doing its thing makes it feel like we're watching someone being tortured rather than in the hands of medical professionals. If this wasn't eerie enough, the actor who plays the radiologist's assistant in the scene is Paul Bateson, who would later be convicted of murder and is still suspected of being a serial killer to this very day. Number 5. Olga's Dance, Suspiria 2018. Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria remake doesn't surpass the brilliant original, but it was a fascinatingly disturbing companion piece that had the good sense to offer its own distinctive spin on the original concept. And by far its most memorable scene is the terrifying sequence where dancer Olga attempts to flee the Marcos Dance Academy, only to find herself trapped in a room lined with mirrors. Intercut with glimpses of protagonist Susie performing a dance for Madame Blanc, we see Olga's body get thrown around the room as though possessed. She contorts in brutal ways, her bones and organs snapping and protruding out of her body, all while she urinates herself and is ultimately contorted into a pretzel-like formation, after which the Academy's matrons stab her with hooks and carry her off. But perhaps worst thing of all, she's not even dead, and we see Olga again at the end of the film, begging Susie, now revealed to be Mother Suspiriorum, to kill her, which she mercifully does. Number 4. Flaying Anna, Martyrs. Martyrs' climax isn't for the faint of heart, and though protagonist Anna is actually still alive when the end credits roll, it's quite arguably a fate worse than death. Anna is captured by a secret society that kidnaps people and tortures them amid the belief that their pain will allow them to enter a transcendent state and witness a glimpse of the afterlife. And to that end, in the finale, Anna is surgically flayed alive. That is to say, all of the skin from her body is removed, save for that in her face. The actual surgery itself is mostly implied and not inherently explicit, but the aftermath is positively nauseating, a testament to the insanely realistic gore effects on display and Morjana Aloui's brilliant performance as an obviously traumatized Anna. In the final scene, Anna is in a catatonic state, yet still alive, though considering the obvious health complications that being flayed alive invites, she's probably not going to make it for very long. Number 3. The Nail, A Quiet Place. By far the most realistic and probable scene on this list is the nail scene from A Quiet Place, where Evelyn heads down into her basement and steps on an upturned nail. Above all else, every single one of us can relate to the basic elemental pain of stepping on something sharp, whether a piece of Lego or an upturned rusty nail sticking out of a floorboard. And in Evelyn's case, it's made even more harrowing by both the fact she's about to give birth to a baby, and she lives in a world that's overrun by monstrous creatures that hunt what remains of humanity by sound. We as audience members also see the nail before Evelyn's does, so we know what's probably going to happen, the dread and anticipation only making it more anxious to watch the inevitable unfold. Coupled with a horrible close-up shot of Evelyn's foot impaled on the nail and Emily Blunt's brilliant performance in the scene, it remains incredibly tough to watch. Number 2. Degloving Gerald's Game. Mike Flanagan did a fantastic job of adapting Stephen King's famously unfilmable novel Gerald's Game, and anyone who'd read the source material was surely dreading how the movie would realise the gnarly degloving scene. The story revolves around a woman, Jessie, who was left handcuffed to a bed in an isolated house after her husband drops dead of a heart attack. Later in the film, a desperate Jessie resorts to breaking a glass to cut her wrist, allowing her then to lubricate the cuff with her blood and free her hand, albeit ripping the skin off and degloving her hand in the process, and even reading this, I'm getting uncomfortable. It's frankly one of the most discomfortingly raw, pardon the pun, gore scenes in any horror film, or any movie period from the last decade. We're not watching someone get hacked in half by a masked killer. Jesse's predicament is decidedly more plausible, and the superbly authentic gore effects combined with Carla Gugino's amazing performance make it a scene even seasoned genre fans might have to watch through splayed fingers. Number 1. The hit on John Parse, Possessor. And finally, here's an especially ironic example of a horrific non-death, considering the scene in question features everyone's favourite cinematic pincushion, the ever-death-prone Sean Bean. In Brandon Cronenberg's brilliant sci-fi horror Possessor, assassin Tasya Voss is tasked with killing wealthy CEO John Parse and his daughter Ava. Tasya possesses the body of Ava's fiancé Colin in order to do the deed, shooting Ava dead and then brutalizing John with a fire poker. His face is horribly beaten before she shoves the poker into his mouth, tearing out his teeth and then following up by ripping out one of his eyeballs. We don't see John die on screen, but the implication seems incredibly clear considering the extent of his injuries. And yet, it's later revealed that John somehow survived the insanely traumatic attack and inexplicably even makes it to the end of the movie in one piece. Some people have all the luck, eh?